today we're going to be discussing a topic that I've put off for quite a while, but I've been meaning to discuss. The topic is discussion on Satan, part 1. Now, Satan is a being that's very complicated as far as my knowledge goes, referring to occult and spiritual and religious texts. So I have, put off this video because it is a very divisive topic, and a lot of the people who follow me on YouTube will believe either one way or the other, and there's not a whole lot of ideas in between regarding the followers that I know about, regarding the followers that I continuously converse with. So right now we're going to go ahead and have a discussion on Satan, and this is going to be part 1. There'll be multiple parts, but okay, Frank, what's your first question about Satan?
Alright, so I was wondering, what do you think about, so I've read conflicting information about that. Well, I think that they were obviously like a hierarchy at one point, right? But what do you classify them as now?
Them as in demons, or like princes of hell, demons?
The fallen angels.
Okay, so as far as Satan goes, we'll go into if he's a exact fallen angel and the idea of it, but I think that fallen angels rely on hierarchy. Like, if they don't have this hierarchy to obey, as far as like, okay, we have, let's say Lucifer at the top, then we have generals or dukes, and then we go down to the lower grades, which would be like colonels and stuff like that, though they don't use the word colonel. I think that without a certain level of hierarchy, even in the hells, then demons would be far more chaotic in their relation to one another, and they really couldn't get anything accomplished. So I think that there's a large degree of hierarchy because it's necessary for them to do anything in counterbalance to God. Now, as far as Satan being a fallen angel, I think that he is a fallen angel, but I also think that without Satan, we wouldn't have that counterbalance to make everything in creation exist. You see what I'm saying? So, like, if we didn't have Satan to basically be the counterbalance of darkness towards, the God that we usually envision as being the God of light, if we didn't have that counterbalance, that, imagine a string and 2 weights on each end. If you didn't have, kind of the same pull, then creation itself and life itself for human beings wouldn't exist as it does, because you need that pull of darkness in order to have free choice. Because if you didn't have that pull, then there would be no choice, because it would be so obvious that the opposite of Maya, the opposite of illusion and delusion, is correct. See what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, I really feel ignorant about it, but I was thinking that if you think of it, see, I mean, I'm curious what everyone else thinks about, as far as like, if there's angels, if they're like fallen angels, and does that coincide with other religions like Hinduism? Or?
Yeah, so like in Hinduism, suras are angels basically, and then asuras are the demons, and they're kind of like two fighting armies. They're two fighting armies in the sense that one represents the harmony of things, which is the suras, or the angels, and then one represents the kind of destruction and chaotic energy of things that is necessary for our existence to continue as we know it. So I think that both are necessary, but yeah, there's equivalencies in all religions when it comes to all religions and most spiritual traditions as far as angels and demons. Do you have any questions about angels or fallen angels besides that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just trying to like categorize their level, like, because I read something that there's the way the world is, the way it is, and well, I don't know if it's in relationship to the way the world is, but possibly like their level right now that I don't think that they can get out
of hell, the hells, the dimensions.
Okay, yeah. So they're not in heaven anymore. They still have access to heaven, which really I find strange. But so it just depends on like what. So
based on the information you know, would you say that they just choose to not be angels, or do you think that there's no choice?
I think that their hierarchy is broken, and I think that they all blame each other.
So you think that the demons kind of fight one another, whereas the angels are kind of like one force? Or because in order to pose any threat to heaven, which they obviously want to do, the fallen angels and their leaders, Lucifer, Satan, Beelzebub, Lucifuge, they'd have to basically work together in some way, right? In some hierarchy.
I agree that, but I think that hierarchy exists. But there's like dark areas in that hierarchy that exist, that they all blame each other for the position that they're in. But it's kind of like as you get older, you'll still always be the same person, right? Like you'll have kind of like the same features.
In a way,
look like a different person. You'll kind of look a little different.
Yeah.
Right, but still the same person.
There's some kind of personality qualities that change, but we're still kind of the same. So like that begs the question that okay, were the fallen angels and were demons, were they always this way even when they were in heaven, or like did they just choose to go opposite of what they were, or use their proficiencies in a different way to a different cause? So I mean that's the question. Is that do you have any ideas about or questions about that topic as far as like were they always bad or were they made bad?
I mean, if that's what do you define as good? If you're able to fall and you're able to sin, or you're able to, if God is pure and you're impure, like.
Yeah, so like, there's the idea that all these angels were always going to rebel regardless of Satan. They always had these qualities, or the ones that were fallen angels or fallen angels to be and demons to be. But there's also the idea that they rebelled. Well, there's two other ideas. One, that they rebelled because Satan, convinced them, and now they're like an opposing force. And then the other one is that basically God had planned this all along. And I think there's truth in all of these different theories. I just think that there are degrees of truth. So, like, do you have any idea about these demons or fallen angels always being that way, or do you think that they always had that quality and then they chose wrong?
Well, I think that's I mean, I don't know, because I like that point that you made because you talk about being truth having various degrees.
Yeah, different degrees of truth in different ways.
So something could be the truth, but a different variation of the truth
in a different way.
Right. Yeah. Somebody else might say, "Well, no, that's not. That's a lie."
Yeah. It's very important to not look at evaluating what you think is bad and good in just saying, okay, I know this is bad or good, or this is absolutely bad or absolutely good, and try and understand that. Different things are good in different ways and bad in different ways. That's a lot of the gray middle ground. But I think angels and demons, they are most towards the extremes of being completely pure or completely darkness, chaotic, things like that. I think that angels and saints and eventually people, sentient beings like human beings and all souls can become angels and gods that are good, and as they evolve. And I think that the potential to fall is the same. You can choose to become a demonic person, and then you become a demon over time, or you might become a prince of hell over time, after a long time, because there's a certain amount in this hierarchy. But, angels are always angels and gods and beings closest to the spirit beyond creation, which is God. They are most orderly and very, very harmonizing to the multiverse, whereas the demons and the demonic princes and things like that, they're always going to be very selfish and chaotic and just trying to really make themselves have as much power as possible. Which is, when we look at world governments, it honestly, I don't want to say world governments are demon hierarchies, but like it has a lot of similarities as far as a lot of not most politicians, a lot of politicians, I don't know the exact amount, they are focused on gaining power for themselves, raising a status. And I think that's a lot of what the demonic princes and demons are concerned with, raising their status, gaining as much power as possible in the hells, and then basically those hells influence this realm. So the higher up in their hierarchy they have down there, which is further and further down in a sense, they have more influence in this realm, in the material universes. Do you have any questions about any of that, or?
No, I really don't have any questions, because it's about either you're dealing in absolutes or you're dealing in variations. So.
Yeah, there's like two ideas that either everything is black and white or everything is black and white, but also has a lot of gray in between.
Yeah, I think looking into it, the more you look into it, would you say the path narrows? I think the path narrows as far as what you're willing to accept and what you want to expand on or explore, like different philosophies, because I don't know.
It's a complicated topic, and there's a lot of layers of truth, and there's a lot of layers of things that we just don't know. There's a void in the knowledge that we have, and I often call myself voidist because I wish to expand that void of what we don't know, expand into that void of what we don't know further and further so that we know more and more. And that's a personal journey everybody takes. And I think that having access to whatever knowledge that you want to study, whatever, religion you want to be a part of or lack thereof, or whatever kind of person you want to try and be, as long as it doesn't hurt anybody else, I think that is very important. That's also why I call myself voidist, because I think that allowing everybody to be in a place and helping them be in a place where they can educate themselves in the way that they want and be able to basically be the kind of person they want as long as it doesn't hurt anybody else, I think that that's what makes me voidist. And I haven't talked about voidism a lot or at all really ever, but I've talked about it in the past. I've written a book that I'm trying to get published, but
So do you think that you should focus more on, because something in my mind says that you should focus on your energy and priorities on something positive, but then another side says to me, maybe this knowledge is important, that you should look into it.
You got to be very careful because, like Kriyananda once said, that to study evil is to be studied by evil. Now, I think that it's important to understand as much as possible and to really put yourself in a position where you have even more choice to choose what is right for the sake of it being right, having understood what is wrong and how people who do, I guess you could say, evil things act. And how they perform these rituals to do this or that, or how they craft spells. And, there's good ways to, of course, do rituals and craft spells and operate in magic. But then you also have the white magic, black magic, ritualistic magic versus rather self-formed magic. But I think there's a lot of overlapping between the two, because a lot of my magic that I do, I kind of make up. And it works, and that's usually not considered ritualistic magic, but I think it is. But anyway, before I get into any of that, I think that it's best to try and know as much as possible, especially about any force or set of forces that you are opposed to. The more you know about, I guess you could say, your enemy, the more you know how they will try and destroy you, in my opinion. But you also have to be careful, because some knowledge that once you know, you can't unknow. And sometimes that can tear at your spirit, I would say tear at your soul, but it's immortal. I would say tear at your spirit. And just why you gotta be careful of knowledge. And I try to know as much as possible, but just know that there's always a risk.
So
even in knowing.
If you can go back to the beginning, right?
Yeah.
Before I don't think that you think that we're fallen, like our bodies are eternal. Or do you think...
Before we go into that, I'm going to end part 1, but we will go into part 2 pretty soon. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in part 2. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, put it down in the comment section below. If you like this video at all, hit that thumbs up down there. And don't forget that I am on Patreon. It's www.patreon.com/darkrealist. Capital E, capital R, one word. So I only ask for $1 a month to get access to the videos that I do only on Patreon, and of course my YouTube videos are there, I put up. And if you want to give me more, that'd be great. But we'll go ahead and head to part 2 pretty soon, and thank you very much.